We are waiting for the final news poll of the election cycle, which is expected to be out and printed in the Australian newspaper on Saturday. That will be a fascinating final insight into how this contest has gone. We do have a couple of opinion polls we're going to look at today, though, because they do show, and these polls at least, a tightening contest. The first one by Resolve, this has been published today in the 9 newspapers. It is worth noting, as we track Resolve through the election, though, that this has been a pretty volatile vote in terms of Labor's primary and the others. You can see the coalition in blue on primary from April 3 through to May 17 has been pretty stable. But look at Labor's going from 38 to 31. That's Labor losing 18% of its primary vote. That's pretty significant. And look at some of the other ones. One Nation goes from 2%, that tiny orange fraction there, to 6%. In other words, it would be tripling its vote during this poll. And then the Greens going from 11 at one stage up to 15, so nearly adding 50% of their vote and back to 14. This does see this poll as a bit of an outlier, in particular with Labor and the Greens. And yes, we know Labor gets a good distribution from the Greens, about 80% of preferences, but it does have Labor on a worse result, particularly in this last poll. That's where the big drop has happened. I'm not saying the drop hasn't happened, but it's worth noting that's a little bit of a volatile primary. How this plays out at the moment on two-party preferred, for this particular poll right now, and we see Labor going from 54.46 down to 51.49. Now, that is on stated preferences. If you did the preference flow from the last election, it would be Labor 52.48. That right there, if it were to be replicated, that would be something that Labor would be in a difficult position to form majority. Remember as well with the coalition, they were sitting on 34-35. That's a 6 or 7% plus drop on their primary vote from last election. So they would not be in a position at that stage to form majority government. Maybe with some really good sandbagging, they could somehow get to minority. It's a tough ask. The other poll out today is the Essential poll that's been done for The Guardian. So taking a look at this one, and you see a much more stable picture from May 3 to May 17, and that has been the case through the past few weeks for Essential as well. Labor steady, the coalition steady, so you're just seeing a bit of a washout instead of the preferences. And what this shows, I think, is a good demonstration that if we see the two major parties here pretty close together, remember where Labor's come from, 33.3 or so they're up slightly. The coalition is down 5%, but where is the coalition primary vote going? A little bit all over the shop. What that will mean for Labor if this is replicated, if they're at the 35% margin, is not that they can't form a majority, just that they'll be relying on preference flows in various seats to get them over the line. If they get to 38, 39, their destiny is essentially likely in their own hands. At 35, they rely on preferences. So that's what this polling essentially means. On two-party preferred, Essential does this a little bit differently to others. Remember, they do allow an undecided, so 49-45 that's actually the wrong way around there, so that should be Labor ahead and Labor ahead here. So just switch the blue and the red in your mind there, but 6% undecided and 7% undecided. So they don't actually get all the way to distributing all of the 100. They simply, they allow people to be undecided. So that's what Essential does. That would still have Labor in a lead of about 51, 52 in that area, probably 51.5. And again, it shows a similar situation. So we'll, of course, bring you news poll later on in the week. So far, the story of these two polls is a tightening. That's not a surprise. 54-46 would be a surprise to both major parties on the day. But still, it's worth noting the coalition on those numbers, the loss on their primary there is the biggest factor right now and the biggest change since the last election, which, of course, is our marker.